Hi, I'm Maggie. Welcome to Experiments in Crafting. Today I've got Lion Brand's new Winter Nights to show you. Winter Nights is a very fluffy, fuzzy yarn, but it has a thread of sequins all throughout it. This yarn comes in 100-gram balls. They're 186 yards or 170 meters. It's a number 4 worsted weight yarn, and they recommend a 5 millimeter knitting needle or a 5.5 millimeter eye crochet hook. Winter Nights is 65% acrylic, 35% polyester, and it comes in 6 different colors, and they're all real icy pastels. I picked these yarns up at Joann Fabric, and they're available on Joann's website and a handful of stores, but they're not available on Lion Brand's website. These are the colors Empowerment and Wisp Perfection, and I really struggled for a little while trying to decide what to do with them. There's no suggestions really on the label. They don't have any patterns. They weren't available on Ravelry, and there was no listing for them on either Lion Brand's website or Ravelry to try and get an idea of what other people had made with it. So I ended up choosing to make kids' fingerless gloves, and I really like the way that they turned out. They're really kid-friendly colors, just being the icy pastels, but the sparkle just gives it a little bit something extra. I was a little bit worried about working with this yarn because it does have these sequins mixed into the yarn, but it ended up not being that difficult. They are a little bit hard to frog if you have to pull your stitches out, but I was worried about actually making the stitches and having the sequins be in sort of the middle of a stitch, and that ended up really not being a problem at all. I'm slightly worried about how these turned out in that the little sequins are a little bit stabby. Depending on how they lay with each stitch, this one is flat, but some of the other ones are sitting at an angle such that they'll push against your skin. So this yarn has since been added to Ravelry, and I looked and just kind of looked around to see what people had made, and some people were suggesting shawls. And that seems like a good idea, something that you would wear over clothing. And I might suggest that these fingerless gloves get worn over a pair of magic stretch gloves, just because I think those sequins are going to start to bother your hands after a little while. I've seen a number of people making sweaters, and that's probably not something that I would like or recommend out of this yarn, just because, again, the sequins don't always lay the way you want them to. But if it's something that you're interested in, it does seem like a popular choice for this yarn. Winter Nights retails for about $6 a ball in the US, and that's not on sale. They recommend 2 balls for a scarf, or 1 for a bag, or 1 for a hat. So that kind of gives you an idea of about how many you would need for a project. I think you could probably get away with 2 to 3 for a good size shawl, and it took me about half a ball to make this pair of kids' fingerless gloves. This style of sequin yarn pops up from time to time, but it's not super common. I did see that Red Heart makes a sequin yarn called Italian Story Lucy, and there are a few here and there, usually sold as art yarns. So there might be some alternatives depending on if you want a slightly different fiber content. The Italian Story yarn has mohair in it, but is also slightly more expensive. Winter Nights is not something that I normally would choose for myself. It's just not quite my taste, but I think that the project turned out really well, and that the little girl that I made these for really likes them. She's seen them and tried them on, and she thinks that they're really fun, and I think they turned out looking really nice. The yarn really wasn't difficult to work with, and I was pretty worried about it because it does have quite a bit of halo or fuzz around it, and then it's got all these little sequins in there, and it's a little bit tricky to pull the stitches out. Like I said before, it's kind of difficult to frog your stitches, but other than that, if you're just working with it carefully, it's really not hard to work with at all. If you make anything with this yarn, I'd love to see it. You can share it with me on Facebook or Instagram at Experiments in Crafting. If you have any questions or comments about the yarn, you can leave those in the comment section below. Thanks for watching.